Welcome to Rewatch-and-Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. And today's episode is Criminal Minds Season 1, Episode 8, Natural Born Killer. Episode in a nutshell is a brief reminder of what happened in the episode. So this episode basically has an undercover cop named James, or Jimmy as they call him, at a bar with Freddie, who is a minor man within the mob, who ends up overhearing Jimmy speaking to a cop and thinks that they were friends, even though Jimmy and the cop try to kind of awkwardly come off as enemies. Even as an audience, though, it is not believable that they are enemies. And this ultimately leads, because there are many of the mob within that bar, to Freddie being considered a loose end, and he ends up getting a hit on him, which is where our serial killer of the episode, Vincent, comes in, who does in fact carry that out. And it is later revealed that he had 100+ victims, but none of them had been women. However, he does kill the aunt of Freddie, who is in the house, and he does do it quickly, but this is what leads to him making a mistake, as he does take Freddie out of the house, which is the one thing that can connect the murder to him. But because he's discombobulated because of having to kill the aunt, he just leaves Freddie in trash bins in the local area, which leads to him being found very quickly. And once he is found, the connections are made to Michael Russo, the mob boss, which another department of the FBI is hunting and has been hunting for 3 years, which is why Jimmy was undercover in the first place, trying to come in and take over the case, but the BAU continues to investigate anyways, which turns out to be a good thing, because they are able to use the connection Freddie has to Michael to find the connection to Vincent, to look at Vincent's past, find his 100+ victims, his weakness, bring him in for interrogation. Once he comes in through interrogation, they are able to narrow down more information about him, also sees his van. Within his van, they realize his local area based on pizza boxes, before also finding the tapes of what he does to his victims once he has finished torturing them. He then leaves them to be eaten alive by rats with a camera that he had set up. And based on the background noise of airplanes and learning through interrogation the name of Vincent's father being Frank, they are able to narrow down his father's house, where they are able to go in, find Jimmy in the basement, and save him before he is eaten by the rats, which have at that point arrived but not yet started their feast. And so in the end, Jimmy is rescued. Michael Russo, the mob boss, is still at large as far as we know, because Josh does not give us an update on whether he arrested him, but based on the conversations going around, I think they haven't yet. And Vincent, of course, is incarcerated and arrested. So now that we have been reminded about what happened in the episode, we'll now rank the episode. We'll start by ranking on the mostly objective ranking list, followed then by the personal ranking list. So we start with our single episode supporting character introductions. And there were 3 main characters that had plot significance to this episode. First one, of course, was James Baker, or Jimmy, who was the undercover cop who gets found out and then gets kidnapped and tortured by Vincent Parada, who was the serial killer of the episode. And both of them are connected to Michael Russo, who was a mob boss who does non-cooperatively help the FBI. Basically, the BAU kind of uses interviews with Michael to make Vincent believe that Michael might be working with them or friendly with them, though Michael himself does not want to cooperate and does not cooperate. And like I said, his fate is up in the air, as we don't really get an update on whether they were able to arrest him as the mob boss or whether he's still out there mob bossing. But either way, each of them are worth 1 point each, which brings us to 3 points to start with. We then have our multi-episode supporting character introduction, which is Josh Kramer, who is member of the FBI. And he, again, works in the organized crime division, which has been trying to catch Michael Russo as a mob boss for 3 years, which Jimmy was undercover trying to infiltrate for the last 2 years. And Josh ends up blaming himself a bit for James getting kidnapped by Vincent because instead of coming to get him and extract him right away, they decided to wait 24 hours because they were so close and they wanted to see if it was really necessary. However, then when they arrived to pick him up, Vincent's already got him. So they basically arrived to an empty street corner. And that also makes him volatile during the questioning, where he almost ruins it for everybody by revealing the fact that James was an FBI agent to Vincent, which is going to make him not want to tell them things. Luckily, the BAU is able to plan other aspects of Vincent's past to get the information that they need to ultimately find James. Then we have our multi-season main character development, and this is worth 4 points each, which brings us up to 13. First, in the very end of the episode, Aaron tells Vincent that people who grew up in his situation, it's understandable that some of them become killers. And then Vincent says, some of them become killers. What do you mean by that? And then Aaron says that some grew up to catch them, which he doesn't outright say he was in a similar situation, but it's heavily implied based on the conversation that he may have been, and then obviously grew up to make a different decision with regards to his future. And so that, I think, is some character development and historical insight into the character. So that's worth 4 points. And then the other 4 points is that it is revealed that Derek used to, before joining the FBI, also do deep cover assignments when he worked for law enforcement, which is how he's able to recognize that James has all of the markings of a deep cover cop, how the the crash pad has no real personal items in it. There's like a false wall that he punches through where he finds the gun in case of emergency, etc., etc. And basically that's how they're able to first distinguish that James, rather than being a suspect as they initially think, may actually have been an undercover cop. And that is later also confirmed by Josh, who does note that when James called him, he notes that he was at the crime scene after the fact because he went to talk to Freddie because he didn't think Freddie believed him that he didn't know the cops, and then found the aunt and uncle like that and ran out, and that's why the neighbor saw him and why he was first thought of a suspect, etc., etc. Now, with these episodes, we do have another scoring system, which is kind of where bias and judgment apply, which is why it's only mostly objective. But whether or not an episode is memorable, semi-memorable, or completely unmemorable, for me, this episode fell into the semi-memorable category. When it started, I'm like, I don't remember this at all. And then as the episode was going on, it was kind of like deja vu, and you kind of were like, oh yeah, now I remember what happened. Now I remember what this was about. And so, because it was semi-memorable, that was a -2 points. But that still leaves us with 11, which does ultimately make this a 10 out of 10 episode on the objective ranking list. So that brings our rankings so far for season 1 on the mostly objective to in first, Extreme Aggressor. This episode is now in second, Natural Born Killer, followed by Compulsion, The Fox, LDSK, Plain Sight, Broken Mirror, and then in last place so far is Won't Get Fooled Again. Now, as to my personal ranking, I gave it a 5 out of 10. I'll get that score out of the way first. 5 out of 10. I felt like it was average. I think there was interest in that we got to see more of the single episode characters. A lot of times it's basically little known victims, random cops, and then, the killer at the end we discover. Whereas in this one, I feel like we spent more time with the side characters than we normally do, which I liked. I thought it was fun that they were, for the first time, kind of interacting with other departments in the FBI. Another positive. And the fact that they brought in, you know, that they were still in their local area, so they didn't need to make a plane flight there. And they were okay. I've got something, and it's not coming to the forefront of my mind. Organized crime. I also thought that that was fun that they were bringing that into it. It helps to build up the world, bring in a little bit more realism, which I enjoyed. But ultimately, while it was semi-memorable, I did also find that it was a little bit on the boring side to watch, unfortunately. And I don't think that they really built the tension in the same way that they have in past episodes, in that, like, this is like an undercover cop. We're supposed to really want him to be saved. And I was just kind of there, like, I don't care one way or the other. I'm just kind of bored. I'm wondering when it's going to be over. Are they going to get there soon? I felt for all the positives that they did have and the new things that they did introduce, they also were a little bit on the boring side. I just wasn't as engaged with this episode as I have been with some of them. It is memorable, but that has more to do with the um, visuals than anything else. Like James, Josh, and Vincent were all good-looking people. So that's what made it semi-memorable to me, not necessarily the actual storyline or what happened in the episode. And so while the visuals were good, again, it was kind of boring, and I didn't really feel attached to or compelled by any of the characters or the storyline, which is why it ended up feeling bland, which again is why I decided average, 5 out of 10 score, right in the middle. And that then, of course, makes the personal ranking so far in first, Compulsion, Plain Sight, Extreme Aggressor. This episode is in fourth, Natural Born Killer, The Fox, LDSK, Won't Get Fooled Again, and then in last place so far for me is Broken Mirror. And that now brings us to the series ranking so far, and this is where we'll be ranking each of the seasons against each other. Season 1 on our Mostly Objective currently has a score of 47 out of a possible 220. Meanwhile, on the personal side, Season 1 has a score of 31 out of a possible 220. But with that, we have now rewatched and ranked Criminal Minds Season 1, Episode 8, Natural Born Killer. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.